Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to another members only video. Unruly Alpha. Who's to blame for America's undisciplined children? I almost made the title America's Most Undisciplined Children, but the jury's out. We don't know if they are or will be. So, right now, they are turning out to be some of the most undisciplined out there today, as compared to Generation Z, who are themselves fairly undisciplined. But uh, the reason I wanted to address this with you today is that I saw a video, which I'm going to play for you. It's 6 minutes long, so I can't play all of it, but I'm going to sort of play and react to it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it as well. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I define for you what it is exactly that I mean uh, by these generations, because it's not always clear who is what generation. So, this is how it breaks down. We have this is Pew Research Center updating age ranges, etc. Silent generation, 1928 to 1945. Baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. Gen X, that's me, barely made it by the skin of my teeth. 1965 to 1980. So I was born in 66. I just barely made it. Gen Z, 97 to 2012. That is all of my children, my three children. And then Gen Alpha, born early 2010s to, now basically 2025. So they're about 0 to 10 years old. So your elementary school cohort is Gen Alpha. Now, we talk a fair amount about Gen Z and teenagers and so forth on this channel, probably because I have a lot of experience with teenagers. That's the age cohort I teach the most, and it currently, and it's the age of my own children. So we talk about Gen Z. Everybody will go online and see teenage TikTok people, whatever. A lot of the kids who are saying, I'm this gender, that gender, the other gender, they're Gen Z. And even taking a look at what Gen Z is, born in 97 to 2012, up to 26 years of age, that's some of your teachers are Gen Z. We're going to talk about that. But we don't talk much about the kids who are currently kindergarten through fifth grade. And I have a feeling that most of you watching this who see stories about poor discipline in schools, you're picturing high school, right? Maybe middle school, high school, you're picturing fights, you're picturing high school kids going at it, beating each other up, fights over girls, fights over boys. A lot of the videos that you see, that's who it is. And it probably doesn't occur to you. You probably think, well, those nice, sweet little elementary school kids, they're fine. Or maybe you have an elementary school student yourself and you haven't really noticed something, that bad in your school, or you are about to send a kid to kindergarten and you think like, how bad could it be? It's only elementary school. I'll deal with discipline issues, or, what I want to worry about after fifth grade. We'll start talking about, homeschool, alternative school, or finding a different school, or moving to a different neighborhood in sixth grade when the rubber meets the road. And I'm kind of here to tell you that you need to think about it now, because this Gen Alpha, which is this generation, um, being raised by millennials, being raised by parents who primarily meet certain criteria, and you, as a parent of a kid in that age range, or a parent in general of even older kids, might not realize who the parents are of these kids, like who are the millennial parents. And the reality is they are older for having kids that young than in previous generations. Um, they're a high percentage of single moms. And I'm going to skip ahead to that because that stood out to me. 35% are single parent. Most of those are mothers. Most of those are mothers. So that tells you that you've got at least a third of kids in kindergarten through fifth grade right now growing up in a home without a dad. I don't care if you're male or female. That's a whopper. That's a big, big deal. Now, you may say, but 65% are not single parents. That's great, but there are other things working against them, namely that these are parents who, to a large degree, waited until they were older to have their kids in the first place. So, for many reasons, uh, chief amongst those was that they wanted to be more secure in their careers. They, couldn't afford to have them sooner. They'd like to have more kids, but they can't afford to. Half of them have only one child, so you also have a lot of singletons. There's not something like inherently wrong with a singleton, but when you add it up, imagine being the only child of a single mother who waited to have kids because of her career, right? Like think about that. Or imagine it's just, only child of a single mother who has to work her butt off to afford to have the single child. There's no dad in the picture. So you've got extremely stressed out parent, singular in many cases, and then parents, plural, even for those who are dual income, or they might have just the one kid. And so what can tend to happen there is that the parents have the one child and they throw everything into that child or nothing. In other words, they're so focused on the career that they spent so long building, they have the child, and then the child goes to school, or the child has a nanny, or the child goes to daycare, or whatever, and maybe gets precious little time with the parent because that's culturally okay. In fact, when it comes to women, it's practically encouraged. You should work outside the home. If not, you're betraying feminism, and, men and women should have equal roles, and, daycare is perfectly fine, and public school is perfectly fine, and so on. So they don't get a reward for saying, I've got to leave early because I need to go spend some time with my child, or I need to work from home and I'm not doing the aftercare thing because whatever. Or I know people who work from home who use daycare. I personally know millennial parents who use daycare and they work from home. Okay. Actually, I know quite a few. So it is very easy for teachers to say, when there are discipline problems, it's the parents' fault, because they look at these kinds of stats and they conclude that parents have made life decisions that are not conducive to parenting, being, full-time parents, or, like, in other words, attentive parents. And they say, well, that's why they're not disciplined. That's why. I would like to use this show to challenge that assertion. First, I'm going to show you some testimony from a teacher, so you know that this is a really severe problem that we have right now with Generation Alpha being pretty much wild. And to hear the teachers blaming the parents, as they often do. So this came to my attention via Catherine Burblesing's Twitter feed, or sorry, X feed, whatever you want to call it. And here's this woman. It says, Gen Alpha kids, young Gen Z teachers are talking about the poor behaviors of Gen Alpha students. She is not Gen Z. She is 36. So technically, she's Gen X, I guess. Late Gen X, maybe? Or is she millennial? I don't know. Anyway, I think she's millennial. Here we go.
Gen Z teachers are talking about the poor behavior of Gen Alpha students, and some of y'all are finally starting to believe us when it comes to how much we've missed the mark on raising these kids right. Because I have gray in my hair and I'm 36 years old, people tend to tune me out as soon as I open my mouth.
Oh, honey, let's have a chat. Anyway, let's continue.
When I start talking about these issues we're seeing in the classroom with our kids these days. So before I go on, why don't we review some of the evidence from some of the other creators on this app who might be a little bit more of a relatable age.
These are Gen Z teachers. They look like little children to me, but they're Gen Z, and they are complaining about children who are currently in elementary school, so Gen Alpha, and their theories as to why it is.
This is my folder of crying teachers, and they are confused and frightened by the behavior of Gen Alpha. They're saying Gen Alpha is defiant, aggressive, disrespectful, and rude.
Having to teach and work with you guys as children has been the most...
You guys as children. So I'm just going to leave that out there.
traumatic experience of my life.
And you've probably had a very sheltered life, but let's continue.
They don't respect any authority.
They don't respect any authority. Put a pin in that.
Ask them, can you stand in your designated
You ask them.
spot? They're telling you no and shut up. They're throwing things at each other. They're throwing things at other people, other classmates. You say, can everybody sit in their spot?
Did you hear her? You say, can everybody sit in their spot? Do you notice anything wrong with that? You, if you're a parent, if you're an adult, if you've ever been a teacher, and you say to a group of children between the ages of 6 and 10, can you sit in your spot? Does that sound authoritative to you? Not authoritarian, authoritative. Now imagine the difference between that and sit down. Now, sit in your seat. Everybody sit in your seats immediately. And maybe even what I used to do in a classroom where we would go to get their attention. And then when they kind of look at me like, sit down now. Can you sit down? Can you sit in your spot? Can you do this? Can you do that? This is adulting 101 with children. Do not give them an option. But this is the teacher, the supposed authority in the classroom who is lamenting your guys' children. Let's continue.
Spot. I don't want to. I'm not doing that. You don't get to tell me what to do. You're not my mom.
Like, I'm not even trying to be funny, but these kids are, I'm going to just say this. I teach 7th grade. They are still performing on the 4th grade level.
Now, he teaches 7th grade, and he says they are still performing on a 4th grade level. So by the time they get to him in 7th grade, yeah, those elementary school teachers just failed, just didn't get the job done, and the kids can't read. So now there's not much he can do. And when you cannot read and you are in school and the job is to read, pretty much in middle school, we need to read to learn, and you can't do it. Do you think maybe you might misbehave and start acting out? I don't know. Maybe it could be, I think. Do you think the parents who sent their kids to elementary school and then went off to their busy job to make a living so they could put food on the table, do you think that they were told that school was going to get the job done and get their kids to read and write, do arithmetic? Do you think that they were told that school was going to teach their kids even social and emotional skills and how to treat each other kindly? And the parents were basically reassured to like, leave us alone to do the job and you stay out of it. So by the time they're in 7th grade and they can't read, I'm just saying.
I'm a middle school teacher. I'm also 22 years old.
He's a kid. He's 22. Okay, I'm just putting it out there. You know, that's really young. I got out of graduate school at 23 and set foot into the classroom. So I know I was young. I was green, but
And I will tell you, by far, we are doomed. Like, these kids do not care. Like, I have kids, all they want to do all day long is get high. Like,
I need to ask millennials, why are your kids so awful? And
why are your kids so awful, millennials? She needs to ask millennials, why are your kids so awful?
more importantly, why do you think it's so funny? Your kids cannot read.
Who said it was funny? Like, straw man. Who said it was funny? And for every one parent out there who might think it's funny, I've never, ever, ever met a parent, millennial or otherwise, who when they find out their kid is misbehaving in school or they can't read, thinks it's hilarious. That still strikes me as an outlier. Like, show me the evidence that millennials think that is funny. And then, remember, they waited to have their kids. They can maybe only have one. And everybody's dogging on them and like, why do you think it's so funny? This Gen Zer is saying that. Okay? Who doesn't have kids yet. Notice something they all have in common, except for the lady with the gray hair who might have kids. They don't have children. A 22-year-old is not speaking from a position of any kind of knowledge of what it is to raise a child to that age or raise a child at all. None of them do. But oh boy, can they pontificate about what it ought to be and how the kids should just march into school and be perfect all the time, all day long in that environment. That's what we're on the hook now as parents. And by the way, who gets blamed also if we try to be involved? If we try to say, I don't want my kids reading that book, I want them to read higher quality material. I really don't want them on a screen 8 hours a day, If that's all right with you. Yeah. Could they read an actual book? Well, now he hamming it. Can I see the homework? No. Can I get into their account? No. Why do you have my, 8-year-old on a screen constantly on a VPN where they could potentially encounter porn? Oh, we keep it safe. I tested it. You don't. And then we do these things and we're domestic terrorists. We're too involved. Shut up, sit down. You're not the expert. Parents can't teach their own kids. Parents don't know what's up. So if you try to be a good parent, and worse, if you have a good kid, right? Case in point, my own middle child, who's now 18, so a Gen Zer, I was a parent who went in and said, this kid over here is bullying my kid. This bad thing is happening. That bad thing. She's afraid to go into school. My kid was solid, good kid, did her homework, quiet, obedient. All the teachers loved her. No behavior issues whatsoever. Didn't even fight back against her bully. Instead, she internalized it and became like an anxious mess. What was I told about why they weren't disciplining the kid who was feral? Well, there are cultural considerations. Well, we tried to have a chat, but the parents don't want to. Well. So is it parents, millennial parents, who are the problem, or is it maybe parent or 2 or 3, and then school allowing the lowest common denominator raised by the worst of the parents to set the standard for how all the kids are going to be disciplined the 8 hours a day that they're in y'all's. They're y'all's kids. But let's continue.
They cannot write. They are ill-mannered.
They are 0. They're 6 to 10. They don't come into school knowing how to write, knowing how to read. Yes, by 10, they probably should be able to write or read or whatever. They're Gen Alpha. How skilled do you expect them to be at these tasks? What did you think the job of teacher was?
I've been trying to sound the alarm about Gen Alpha students and their poor behavior in their classrooms, as well as their literacy problems, since May of last year. But because of my age and how I look, every time I make a video about these topics, I'll get people that have never worked with kids or have never spent a day in the classroom as an educator give me lines like, well, you're just old and jaded. If you don't like it and you can't handle it, quit and find another job. Kids have always been like this. Nothing's new in 2023. And then we've got the droves of people that are trying to blame it on COVID and trying to blame it on the lockdown. Us not having
That was a contributing factor, whether you like it or not. So, well, let's continue.
any sympathy or empathy for students with special needs, even though I never talk about those types of students. And I'm always talking about general population students and the fact that this is an overarching problem with every single kid, even the high achievers, even the ones that don't need IEPs, even the ones that are highly socialized.
And that should be your clue, because the common denominator that all the kids, even the high flyers, even the high achievers, etc., which is more likely that all parents of a generation, that all of them, now we know statistically, a third of them are single parents and so forth and so on. So we know what their common denominators may be, but those don't inherently make them good or bad parents. They just give them a certain amount of stress that we can infer that they are dealing with a certain amount of stress. A lot of it created by government policies and inflation created by government, taxation created by government. The taxation goes to pay for what? Oh, yes, the schools, amongst other things. So, there's that. So we know what those common denominators are the parents share. Beyond that, we don't know. Now, is it more likely that that all of these parents just suck and don't discipline their kids at all? Or that the centralized place that all the kids are showing up to every single day that she shows up to for 8 hours a day, 9 months of the year, has procedures, policies, and a culture in place that rewards in some way this kind of behavior so that it gets perpetuated? Which is more likely, do you think? Because I'm a parent advocate. Now, that doesn't mean I let all of y'all off the hook when there's bad parenting. I have no doubt there's some absolute crap parenting going on. And there are individual kids who come in, like the one that bullied my kid, who are just out to lunch and the parent is a demon. Okay. I happen to know for a fact that the parents of that girl were bullies themselves and they were just terrible. And the daughter tragically was modeling, was projecting that into the classroom on everybody else. But how did that become the toxic environment for my child and every other child in that classroom that it became? How did the other kids in the class get the message that this was okay behavior? So they started doing it too. They didn't get that by all being parented by those bad parents. And they all didn't all have bad parents. That's a reach. That's a reach. There's not some societal trend to never ever discipline your children. Okay. Now, that having said that, where were the millennials taught how to do anything? Where'd they go to school? What? Right. They went to the same schools. And what was going on when they were in school in terms of discipline, in terms of what to expect out of being at school, what to expect from the teachers, the other kids? Because remember, when they were in school, when millennials were in school, their teachers were boomers, some Gen Xers, but boomers and Gen Xers were their teachers and their principals. And what was extremely popular at the time that millennials came into school was the self-esteem movement. Self-esteem movement was very popular. They have to feel good about themselves. When I started teaching in 1990, what I just said to you about sit down, take your seat. Oh, that would not be allowed. I'm sorry. That's too harsh. As it was, I didn't get my contract renewed because I wasn't, quote, nurturing enough. I wasn't nurturing enough. What did that translate to? Well, I taught first and second grade. And I did not, every single time I had to speak to my students, get down on my knees. I am not exaggerating. They wanted me to I'm only 5 foot, half an inch. So yes, they're little tiny children, but I'm not a 6 foot tall, ginormous Amazon woman towering over them in some scary position of authority. And remember, I was 23 and I looked like maybe I was 17. I needed every advantage I could get to assert any degree of authority over these kids because kids are kids and they're not going to automatically do what you say. You have to project a certain amount of authority in the room, not to be a bully, but just to be like, yes, I'm running the show here, not you. And that's, that don't hear me saying something like, I'm some drill sergeant, but you can't learn in chaos. So you do have to command their attention and you do have to know how to get it, keep it, hold it, let them loose and then come back when you need them. Classroom management is really important. It's a skill. I had a year to learn it in student teaching and I was actually pretty good at it. So I'm standing there and my principal walks by and sees me standing and speaking to a little, 6-year-old girl who's looking up at me a little bit because she was teeny tiny. And all she was doing was asking me a question. And I was like, da, 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 whatever. So I happened to walk past your room and observe that you were standing when Lauren B was speaking to you. I said, yes. Is that a problem? Yes. Well, we really like it too. And she then made me follow another teacher around to watch how this almost 6 foot tall teacher would kneel down, crouch down for every kid every time. Now, what message do you think it sends to a child when they come up to speak to you and you're standing and your first reaction is, hold on, let me kneel. Hang on, let me get down to your level. When I come to give you direction and look over your shoulder at what you're doing, I have to get down and be like eye to eye with you every single time. Not just when I have to have an extended conversation, because of course I did that when I would work with my reading groups or my math groups, or I would sit there and to give direction to one child or work closely with one child. Of course I sat down or kneeled if it were necessary for me to be on eye level to give them direction for longer than 30 seconds. But somebody's asking me a question, I'm not going to kneel down every time. Every time. It's too intimidating. We don't want to have an intimidating classroom. This is a public school in Illinois. Okay. So, and couple that with, I wasn't allowed to, there were all kinds of things I wasn't allowed to do in terms of punishment. They got rid of sending kids to the principal's office. If a kid's acting out, hit somebody, use the scissors inappropriately, like, I mean, dangerous stuff. Used to be, you would get an aide, or you'd get somebody to take the kid to the principal's office to have a little chit chat. Maybe call their mom or dad if there was violence. And it would be immediately. It was not like, hey, let's not do that. It was like you literally hauled off and committed assault. Like if you were larger, that would have been assault. But because you're 6, no, we're going to just resolve it right here and right now. We don't hit people. We don't hit people. We share our toys. We this, we that. We were talking to 6, 7, and 8-year-olds like they were little babies in daycare. Not like kids who were, you were expecting to start moving up in maturity and dealing with things independently and resolving their own issues, and was still with the baby talk. I spoke like this to my students. And again, I was told the way you speak is not nurturing enough. There was no end to the criticisms of me because I was not fitting the sweet and soft and sing-songy for elementary school. Because it was too harsh, it was too strict, it was too this, it was too that, and their self-esteem, their poor little fragile self-esteem was going to be injured. And between that and the way they were making me teach reading with the stupid whole word language, I was like, I'm out. I'm out. You're not allowing me to teach these children in a way that is appropriate. And by the time they get to 5th grade, they're going to be wild animals. And here we are. That was in 1990. They're now parents. They are parents, my students. Okay. And I'm sure that the policies in my school were not unique. They were the same kind of soft touch. Everybody gets a trophy to build their self-esteem. And we don't want to have strict discipline. And it's very harsh and mean. Get down on your knees, get at their level. For those first years of school, I'm pretty sure it's the same. So those parents were raised with the it's a soft touch, and this. So where do you learn to parent? You learn from your parents, you learn from your teachers, and you learn from your camp counselors if you have them, or youth group leaders, or Girl Scout troop leaders, whatever. You learn from adults working with kids, including you. Now, who do you spend more time with as a child? Your mom and dad or your teachers? For 13 years, you spent most of your waking hours, and for millennial generation, most of whom were also put in daycare, you spent it with people not your parents, who were being told it was abusive to even touch a kid. Never mind spank or, whatever. I mean, I'm not pro spanking necessarily, but what I'm saying is the smallest things were now abuse. Raising your voice. This is not new to say it's raising your voice is abuse. Being grounded. Oh no, we have to have a chat about everything. We have to reason. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I went to buy parenting books when I had my kids who are Gen Z, and the walls are filled with gentle parenting and gentle this and gentle that. And I grant you, I agree with a lot of what it says, but a lot of people misinterpret that to be, we don't discipline. We don't set limits. It's your choice. What do you want to eat? What do you want to do, etc. They were given unbelievable amounts of choices. I remember very clearly when they stopped using red ink. That was in school when the parents of today, parents of Gen Alpha, were children. So you go through 13 years of expecting that the way you're supposed to treat children is with love and kindness and hugs and kisses, and that, they can be reasoned with and so on. And you think that school they're the experts. They've told you since you were knee high to the grasshopper that they know better, and your parents don't know squat. And you send your kids into this environment, and your kids have no boundaries and no idea what to do. And then they turn around and blame you anyway. I'm not saying parents are blameless. I'm saying that it is rich as can be for these people to blame the parents. Let's continue and see what else she has to say. But I really had to get that out there, that the parents of today were by and large raised by the schools of yesterday. And now the schools of today are whining and complaining about the people they made. So think about that next time they tell you that they're preparing the 21st century thinkers and movers and shakers and change makers. They're doing it. And you can't. Like, homeschooling should be banned. And parents don't know what's best. And, school choice, which I oppose for other reasons, is a bad idea because parents won't make good choices, not because school choice is another government, grab. Their reason is we don't want parents to have any power at all. So we don't want parents to have any power at all, but parents, why aren't you doing a better job of delivering to us perfectly mature and self-aware, responsible, polite, well-behaved 6-year-olds? What exactly did they expect to do in their classrooms? Did they think teaching was just about passing off the next wonderful social justice message? Or did they understand that part of the job, as I understood it, even in my graduate school program, we still had classroom management stuff. We still had things about discipline. In fact, I was taught about what I did that the my then school who hired me didn't want me to do it. Must have had an old school teacher teaching me in my student teaching thing. In fact, I did. I worked with a woman, a kindergarten teacher in West Philadelphia, had to be in her upper 60s. And the school was very poor. Like, I mean, we're talking 100% free and reduced lunch. And the population was also 100% Black. And this teacher was quite strict, quite strict. And those kids behaved. Those little 6-year-olds listened to her and did what she said. She was loving. You could see it. You could see in her eyes. She was tall. She was probably 5'8" or so. I never saw her get on her knees to these children. She would stand there. If you watch Marva Collins too in her videos, she stands over the kid's desk, stands. There is something to be said for that. The teachers were referred to as Miss, not by their first name, not Miss first name, but Miss and last name. And there was some kind of authority there. And those kids behaved and those kids did well. Now, I can't speak for the other teachers in the school after they left kindergarten, but that's who taught me about classroom management. And I go into my school and I try to do the same thing. Well, it's their feelings are going to get hurt. And now they're parents. Let's continue.
And have a lot of resources coming from home. Teachers that have been in this for 1, 2, 3 years are seeing it and they are talking about it. Teachers that are veterans like me that have been in the classroom for over a decade or 2 or 3 or nearing retirement are also saying the same thing.
Her gripe seems to be that people don't believe her. People don't believe her that the discipline problem exists in K through 5. And again, if you're judging by what's going on TikTok with who believes you, I mean, branch out a bit, lady. Talk to some actual parents, maybe outside the population of your school, but go some other places. We believe you. We see it. We definitely see it. What do you think Moms for Liberty is? Like, all the complaining people do about groups like Moms for Liberty, Moms for America, and some of the other parent groups get no end of complaints about we shouldn't exist. And we're in the way and we're causing problems and we're Nazis and we're this and we're that. But it's like, at a minimum, you could say we believe you. That's one of our problems with what's going on. We'd actually like to help. We think that the policies are setting you up for failure and tying your hands behind your back, that you can't discipline in the classroom. But I'm not picking up on that she wants to, or that any of these other people want to discipline. They want kids to come into school. Yes, teacher, we shall behave for you. I hate to break it to you, folks. I didn't get students like that. Why should you? What the hell did you think the job involved? Now, I grant you, they're worse behaved, perhaps in part because their parents have no clue what to do and aren't home a lot and aren't around, but they were given to believe that that was okay. That in fact, that was better to leave it to the experts. That's what they grew up with. So, I believe you, ma'am. So let's skip ahead a little bit.
Back to that kids don't socialize with each other enough. We can blame it on the economy and the fact that parents don't have time to help their kids learn how to read or don't have time to take.
Wait. I'm sorry. Don't have time to help the kids learn to read. Y'all keep telling us don't. If I had $1 for every time a teacher got in touch with me, a tutor that a parent hired to help a kid with reading or writing, and I'd get nasty grams from the teacher that they didn't like what I was doing with the tutoring, even though the kid was improving because it was different from the way they were doing it in the classroom. Oh my God, I could retire. No end of complaints about parents messing with their project that they're working on. Well, the parents don't have time to help them learn to read. Well, first of all, y'all would have to be honest with parents that the kid doesn't know how to read. The parents are assuming that the kid can read because you said they could. Again, if I had $1 for every parent who came to me crying in tears because the kid was in 5th grade and they finally hear the truth that their kid can't read, when they ask and they ask and they ask, is my kid okay? Is my kid okay? I don't think they can read. No, they're fine. They're fine. They're fine. Yeah, it's fine. They're fine. Everything's fine. Because they didn't want the kid to get classified and they didn't want to have to spend IDEA money on that kid. It really frustrates me when school personnel will complain about the outcome of their own policies as if they had nothing to do with it. That the poor discipline in these grades has what? Are we really to believe that an entire classroom of 6-year-olds is arriving at school loaded for bear and ready to hurt people? I don't believe that. I just don't. Okay. So I believe there are some, like I said, parents who are sort of clueless. They think the school's going to take care of it, or they've had their kids in daycare all the time and they're, whatever. And there are some objectively bad parents, but the school is supposed to be a structured place where if you get nothing else, you get some expectations of your behavior. And when you don't meet the expectations of your behavior, you are sent home. The parent's so awful, send the kid home. Go ahead and blame the parents one at a time. When you have a kid who's misbehaving to the point where they're destroying the classroom for everybody else, you don't blame parents. You don't go on TikTok and go, parents, it's parents. You take that kid, you take me off and say, Mom, Dad, I don't care who is coming to get this kid. Deal with it. You suspend them, you expel them, you tell them, I know you have a right to an education, but you don't have a right to destroy education for everybody else. So when your child can behave, and then maybe that parent is going to do something. But now they even did, don't tell your parent. The parents might abuse the child. The parents might yell at the kid. Don't tell them they've switched pronouns. Mom and dad, blah, blah, blah. You don't think it's also a behavior problem when a kid becomes so thin-skinned and suicidal that they're basically emotionally bullying everybody else in the class because you won't tell their parent they have this problem because the parent might be mean to them? But then you want to bitch and moan about they're not disciplining their kids enough? What in the hell?
Take their kids to the park anymore. We can blame it on all of those things, or
I'm sorry, I wasn't taken to the park. Next.
We can blame it on none of those things. But it sounds like we're starting to get into a consensus here amongst educators that we have a real problem.
Yeah, we do. And it's located in the schools. The common denominator is they're not behaving at school because they get away with not behaving at school. Even kids who are well behaved at home, if they go to school and the culture to survive that culture is to sass, mouth off, sit there and ignore the teacher or whatever, because that's the cool thing to do, or that's what you're, being a goody two shoes and get you in trouble because the majority are being allowed to carry on like that. Guess what? So, you wanted equal outcomes, you got them. You set the bar very, very low, and you set it very low when their parents were kids. So you're lucky that the millennial parents are even making any attempt at all to parent. Okay?
And some of y'all need to stop making excuses. You're just blaming the kids. You're just so mean. No, we are not.
Actually, I don't think it's mean to blame the kids. You should blame the kids more. That's what we're saying. We're saying who's saying you're so mean, you're blaming the kids. That would be one of the bad parents, but you're extrapolating from that and saying it's all parents. No, it's not.
The problem is that we have this generation of parents that doesn't want to take accountability for not doing what they need.
The generation of parents doesn't want to take accountability. A whole generation of parents doesn't want to do it. Really. Again, I'm just going to ask you, which is more likely? The entire generation of parents that is decentralized, they run the gamut of all different kinds of backgrounds and so forth and so on, right? Diversity. Okay. So no, a generation of parents. As I said, all we know about them is there's a high percentage who are single parents and they waited to have kids. And that's about the most we can say generally about millennial parents. Other than 98 point something percent of them attended the same schools that are now bitching about their parenting. So the schools that taught them how to be who they are screwed up, in my opinion, screwed up massively. You don't get to say you are the best people to shape the next generation. You are the epitome of expertise on the everything a child should know to be in this world, to change society. Y'all are the experts. You're gonna teach our kids how to change the entire society, all the social mores, all the economy, how everything works, what kind of like what we value, innovate, how we apply AI, etc. No, you guys claim education, and I'm on solid ground doing the you guys thing because you've got Randy Weingarten in charge of close to 4 million people. You've got oh no, I'm sorry. I think it's Becky Pringle that has close to 4 million and Randy has close to 2 or something. We have a total of like between 6 and 7 million teachers who are members of the teachers union, of their 2 teachers unions. And that's not counting all the local affiliates of, that are not under their direct umbrella. Millions upon millions of teachers who are in lockstep on one thing, that you guys can do better than we can, that homeschooling, in fact, should be banned. And then you want to complain that we don't deliver to you perfectly still lumps of clay that are just waiting to be shaped into whatever it is you want them to be. First of all, they're individuals. So there's also a limited amount that any of us can do to them. They have temperament, they have personalities. There are right and wrong ways to address that and corral that. But it is part of your job as a teacher. And you just don't get to have it both ways. You do not get to say, we're the experts on all things children, all things education, but y'all, and we have a generation of parents.
Need to do to raise kids that are self-sufficient, that are socialized, or kind. And
And what do you think? Is it kind? Is it kind to tell a kid you're from an oppressor class? You're oppressive. All your ancestors were oppressors. Oh, you're male. You're part of rape culture. You're part of the cis heteronormative male toxic blah blah blah, which they are doing as young as 6. By the way, the world's going to come to an end in 12 years or 5 years or 2 years or 10 years or whatever because of the climate. And your mom and dad shouldn't drive it. Oh, by the way, your mom and dad are probably abusers. And you know what? Tell us your pronouns in secret. We won't tell them because, your mom and dad don't know what they're doing. They just assigned you a sex at birth. But mom and dad, why don't you have more authority over your children? I can't imagine why.
And no, it's not the kid's fault. And why does it seem like teachers are the only ones that are talking about it?
I don't know. Maybe because you live in a bubble and the only people you're talking to are teachers. Maybe. Could be. I don't know. Could be.
The people that are talking about it are the ones that work with the kids and not the ones that are raising the kids.
Lie. We are talking about it, but we don't count. Moms for Liberty, conservative moms, libertarian moms, homeschool moms, people, moms who actually show up to PTA meetings, moms who show up to school board meetings. We're suddenly invisible. Because why? Because they need a scapegoat. They need a scapegoat. When we complain about their procedures and things being their fault, then we're Nazis. But when there's bad behavior that is the obvious, logical output of their asinine social justice pedagogy, their critical pedagogy, then it's our fault. A generation and a half in from the implementation of social justice discipline in school. So the parents of today had it. They had restorative justice. They had self-esteem movement. They had petty little bullshit microaggression talking tos.
Gen Alpha have been raised to believe that they are grown folks, that they...
What are your pronouns? Yes, you can choose. Oh, you're only 3, but you can consent. They've been raised to believe they're grown folks. By whom? Let's have a drag queen story hour. Let's have, explicit pictures, graphic naked pictures of people in our 5th grade class. Let's do that. Sounds good, right? They've been raised to believe they're grown folk. Let's talk about my sexuality and I'm your teacher. Who's raising them to think they're grown folk?
That they can speak to whoever they want, however they want.
Just call me mix something something. And you know what? If your mom doesn't like it, I'll be your mom. Can't imagine where they got that. Oh, by the way, all of today's lessons are going to be on a screen. And you're going to need to download the Class Dojo app on your phone. Why doesn't Johnny have a phone? Well, Johnny's only 7. Well, we use Class Dojo and we use this, we use that. So he's going to have to go on the Chromebook and, be on the VPN and whatever, and they have YouTube and this and that and the other. They're not going to be able to do the assignment. I wonder why Johnny thinks he's grown folk.
That violence is the answer.
Again, I wonder. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Why? Where would they get the impression that violence is the answer? It's a mystery, really.
Gen Alpha students are raised in a world that tells them that it's okay to be as nihilistic and individualistic as possible, that they don't.
That's not individualism, honey. Nihilism, yes, but that's not individualism. That's narcissism. Don't confuse the two. Narcissism is not individualism. All right? Because individuals have boundaries that they want respected, so they respect other people's boundaries. Yes, which schools don't do. So nihilistic, you're right. But the word you're searching for is narcissism.
They don't have to care about anything or anyone, that they can.
Well, why would they? Say my pronouns, bitch.
Speak to anybody however they want to speak to them, even though they're
not if they're white or male. That's not okay. But anybody else, yeah, for sure.
Only 10, 11, or 12 years old. Most importantly, they are being conditioned to believe that they are immune to consequences.
And again, I wonder why. It's totally fine for you to just riot and burn down a city and, there won't be any consequences for that. You could just block a highway, no consequences. Hey, let's have a conversation about how we're going to go walk out of school today to protest that anyone anywhere doesn't agree with us, and there will be no consequences. Let's do that. Let's just endlessly protest. Let's call people Nazis and fascists and scream over them and tell them they're not allowed to have their own opinions and they're bad people because of the way they look or whatever, and they disagree with us, and no consequences for doing so and taking over the entire class to do it. But I can't imagine why they think they shouldn't have to have any consequences. It's shocking, really.
That there are no consequences to their poor behavior, to their rudeness, to their lack of care in completing tasks and doing well in school.
Why would they care? The earth is coming to an end. Did you not hear? Why would they care? There's ChatGPT. Why would they care? Y'all don't care. No one can fail. Everybody passes. Nobody's going to be left back. I grew up with the specter of being left back. That doesn't happen anymore. I grew up with the specter of you're not going to graduate if you fail. That's not going to happen anymore. They see kids getting A's and nobody gives a shit. In fact, they're not allowed to talk about their good grades because it might make somebody else feel bad. So why would I bother? I mean, achievement is downright silly. You're almost like an idiot if you pour your heart and soul into working on this crap. You're going to get a C anyway. You just show up and sign your name. You're going to pass. I can't imagine why they don't care about excellence.
They just don't care. Is this us demonizing kids for fun? No, it's not. The people that are talking about this are genuinely concerned.
Are you? We'll see if genuinely concerned people don't talk in generalities into TikTok and say things like that it's, the parents' fault without stopping and looking in the goddamn mirror. I look in the mirror every single day and say, am I being the best parent I can be today? And when I was a teacher, I did the same about that job. And even now when I teach or I tutor, I ask myself that question, but I do look in the mirror and I do say, what could I do differently in my private Idaho of this classroom? How can I figure out how to get these kids to behave better? And if I can't do it, if I'm held back by something, then I go to the next immediate person. I don't go on TikTok and scream at millions of parents who don't even have kids in my class and blame them. as if I'm just this completely innocent bystander and none of it is, it's all outside of my control. And if it is, and if I'm being too hard on them and I should really just go, well, Deb, it is outside their control, then by all means, please cede that control back to parents. Let us have our money back and let us figure out what to do about getting our kids educated on our own. If you don't want to do the job, please admit it. Stop doing it because you're doing a shit job, and we'll start over. And y'all can go off to some other job that does not require you to take care of other people's misbehaving children. If you think we're doomed, then how is it that y'all are going to prepare the 21st century workforce that's going to just make this sustainable development goals a reality? You do not get to have it both ways.
We are frightened for these kids. And if
What do you think I do all day?
you're sitting back saying, oh my God, poor babies, like, I wish you would just quit talking.
Nobody's saying that. Who is saying that? I want to meet the 5 people on planet Earth who's going, oh my God, poor babies. Moms for Liberty gets accused of that all the time. Says, that parents are sitting there going, oh, my poor precious child is seeing porn. No, they're not. Actually, they're not. Most of the parents who want the porn out of the libraries, believe it or not, it's not just because they don't want their kids to see it. They don't. And they don't want it shoved down their kids' throats. That's for sure. But they're not going, my poor innocent child with no agency at all. They're talking to their kids. They're saying, I don't want you to see this. What they're frustrated by is that their best effort to raise a responsible, modest, child with good boundaries and self-control in terms of sexuality and their expression of it as a child who can't consent, are being combated by the school. They don't see them as little innocent waifs. They just see themselves as being in a pitched battle for their child's soul and mind and body to an extent. That's it. It's not the poor, innocent little baby. It's y'all are outside your boundaries here. You stay over there and we'll deal with things that have nothing to do with reading, writing, math, etc. That's why they get pissed off. Nobody's saying, oh, the poor babies. And I will say, oh, the poor babies, about 6-year-olds asked their pronouns and told that they shouldn't trust their parents. But the people doing that, creating a situation where we say that poor child, are very young children who are being bullied by teachers.
But talking about them because you're just being mean and it's not even helpful because kids are just kids. You are doing them absolutely a disservice to their future. This is not just an old people complaining about young people problem anymore. Young people in Generation Z, young teachers.
First of all, I have a theory. She's on TikTok and she keeps insisting these imaginary people are saying, lay off the kids and you're so mean. Did it cross her mind that the people writing those things in the comments of her TikTok are kids, are 5th graders, or 6th graders even, complaining about her talking about kids? Did it cross her mind? Because I have or people who have no children at all, so they have no skin in the game and they're just trolls. I promise you, there are not millennial parents sitting on TikTok going, leave the kids alone, poor baby. No, I'm sorry, I don't believe that. I could be wrong. I'll admit I can't prove it, but I have a sneaking suspicion that's not the people that she thinks she's talking to. Okay. And in fact, it would do her some good to actually reach out to those parents, the ones who want to be involved, and say, all right, do you guys have any ideas? I bet they'd get some ideas, but they don't want to work with parents. They want to tell parents what to do and how their kids should act.
Who are seeing the same thing I'm seeing with my 2 eyeballs are talking about the same thing. You can call it an old folks.
She keeps going back to this old folks. So that, honey, stop flattering yourself. You have some gray hairs, but you're only 36. Okay. Seriously, I'm 20 years older than you. And, with all due respect, it's not about it. It's not an old person, young person thing. It's not. It is a values thing. It is a policy thing. It is a critical pedagogy problem. It is a problem that is located primarily in the schools. And you can sit there and you can blame social media all you want. And you can say, well, the parents, let their kids have smartphones. But I am telling you right now, they are at 8 hours a day in those schools. If the schools took the damn phones away and said, this is not having in your backpack for an emergency, but it is not in your hand. It is not at your desk. It does not come out, or you will face an immediate consequence. And better yet, we're not doing on the phone games in class. We're not using a Chromebook for every single assignment every single day. You're going to read paper books. You're going to do some work on paper pencil, and that's how it's going to be. You would see dramatic change. Parents would breathe a sigh of relief. You mean I don't have to get my kindergartner a smartphone because the school isn't asking to interact with them on it? Schools are constantly saying your kid needs to have this app, that app, the other app. If they made it super easy for parents to go in and get their kid to pick up or go visit their kid or whatever, they wouldn't be so paranoid about the kid having a phone for an emergency, because it's like the steel wall of defense that you can't get past if you're a parent. You need to make an appointment and get approval and blah, 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 blah. You don't just get to like walk in, do your little background check, sign in, and walk in and observe your kid's class. I promise you, parents would feel a lot more confident not sending their kids to school with a phone if they didn't feel like their kids were going into a fucking prison. Excuse my language. But anyway, that's what I'm saying. I'm sick of parent blame. I'm sick of it. And the last thing I'm going to say on that score is, if you are a parent watching this and you have kids in school at any age at this point, and you're frustrated by this or any other issue and want to talk to other people about it, want to talk to me about it in a nice, safe, secure environment where you don't have to deal with judgment of this nature, and you want to get some things off your chest and work through some problems, I hope you'll consider joining The Reason We Parent, my new group that just launched. And we're going to start our meetings the week of January 8th. So we're going to have 2 meetings, one in the evening on Sunday evenings and one Wednesday at noon. And hopefully you'll be able to make, 1 or 2 a month, at least based on that schedule, because there'll be 2 a week available. And hopefully you will tell your friends about it. But I think parents need a place they can go with other parents to talk about this kind of issue. So nothing political, nothing, we're not going to sit around and talk about politics. We're not going to talk about who to elect. We're not going to talk about, we got to reform this, reform that, but just, you want to sit as a mom or a dad and say, you know what? I just need some help figuring this situation out with my kid's teacher about this, that, the other, or I've got a kid and I want to pull them out, but they're fighting me, or whatever the issue is. And you just want to talk to other people who are not going to say how it's all your fault, because that's not going to happen in my group. I won't allow it. So anyway, that's what I have for you today. Thank you for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And I will be back again next Friday. Sorry to skip 2 Mondays, but we have these holidays. And I'll be back with another one after that. Have a good one.